I thought moving to Japan would change my lifestyle, but it actually made me realize the life that works for me. I've been living in Japan for about half a year now, and once the novelty wore off, I started noticing patterns in my routines, in my energy, and what actually works for me day to day. And some of them kind of forced me to be honest about who I actually am, not who I thought I was or who I wanted to be. And all of this changed how I see myself for the better. Something I'm trying to figure out is my social rhythm in Tokyo, because it's probably the area that I've been lacking the most while I've been living there. I think I took for granted how good I had it in college and school growing up, because I always had a third place. I always had a basketball team to go to. I always had a club or even a part-time job where I was close with people, I could relax with them and really develop a good bond. I've realized I've struggled with that a lot more since being in Japan than I thought I would. For example, I met a wonderful group of Japanese people that play volleyball. However, they only meet every 6 to 10 weeks. So it's amazing, but it doesn't happen often. I went to 2 dance studios. One required you to have a residence card, which I won't have until next year. The other only had about 3 or 4 people, with 2 of them being dance instructors. So it felt more like an instructive class than a social experience. And I've tried to use certain meetup apps for like language exchange or certain sports. It's hit or miss. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. I've also learned that even though I'm 23 years old, nightlife does not work with my life. I'm like a 23-year-old person with like a 70-year-old body. The moment that stuck out to me the most was when I went to Shinjuku Warp. It was a novel experience. I'm glad I went to see what it was like there. There's hundreds of people there. Each room had a different genre of music, like K-pop, EDM. When you go clubbing, you just see things that you just don't see day to day. For example, while I was waiting in one of the rooms for one of my friends, I saw directly in front of me a 3-season Netflix K-drama. The guy approaches the girl and she acts like she's not interested. And then I turn my head, 10 seconds later, they're kissing each other. I'm like, where did this come from? Did I miss an episode? And then 5 minutes later, they're fighting and he's on to the next girl. Like, I was speechless. It was funny. You don't get that anywhere else. And here's the thing. It's not that I wasn't having fun. I actually had a lot of fun and I do enjoy that experience. But fun is not sustainable. I know, sue me for being the fun police. But like, the last train is at 12 a.m. or midnight roughly. And then the next train is 5 a.m. So that night, I was having a great time. At around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., I started tapping out. And staying out till 5 a.m. is so difficult. Fun is fun, but it's just not something I can do more than like once every 3 months. So yeah. But I'm glad I experienced it. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I really benefit from just very quiet, chill, repeatable environments. And in a place like Japan, you can really lean into this heavily. For example, walking here feels amazing. You can live a life here without a car, you can walk and train and be perfectly fine. For example, I lived in LA for 3 years, and one of the most difficult things was how necessary having a car is and how bad the traffic is day to day. And I think for me, it affects me a lot more than I thought I would, because it makes just like daily life existing like hard. And I didn't realize how bad that was for me. I think I'm just kind of further out on the spectrum of how much more I dislike driving and how much more I like walking and taking the train, which is kind of good and bad, I suppose. I feel like I'm in like a near accident every other week in LA versus when I'm like in the Bay Area, and that happens like once every like 6 months. And not only is LA super car heavy, but it's also like kind of anti-walking heavy. I think that makes sense. Even though I lived in Westwood, which is only a few miles from Santa Monica, you don't really walk to those kind of places, because I think it would take a couple hours probably. So you just drive. I think Tokyo just does a really great job at making walking feel enjoyable. And I think since COVID, I think it's more so recently that I'm really embracing that this is who I am. And I really like having that agency over my life, which I've never really had before, to kind of take control of it. Yeah, just make it how I want and not feel bad about living the life that I do live. It has been quite bumpy, to be honest, and far from a smooth path. Living in Japan has taught me things that I never would have learned elsewhere. Learning about visas, which I do not want to ever touch paperwork again. Learning about rent and how to just go about the process. And yeah, just figuring out a lifestyle of like routines, what what I can do for work, how I enjoy spending my time. All of these things can be a lot of pressure, but ultimately is a lot of freedom too. But if there's one thing that I do think that does pull me back, being at home, there is a lot of my life roots here with my friends and family, and I realize that that simply can't be replaced anywhere I go unless I get married. And I feel like that's really important to me, staying in a place that has people that I've known for years, maybe even decades now. So yeah, Japan didn't give me a new life. It does help me understand the one that fits me best. And for a time of exploration for me, I could not be happier. じゃあね. By the way, do you guys like my new scarf? I got it in Shinjuku for $5.